Hello, my name is Maria Bezubova and you're at my channel Fertilizers Jazz. Here we talk about events, trends, technologies in the world of fertilizers and agriculture. Please subscribe to the channel, put like to this video, and let's jazz! With today's video, we continue the regular mini-series of analytical discussions with prominent market analysts. And today's topic is phosphates market. In order to discuss it, I am happy to host again super cool guest, Chris Vlachoupolus, markets editor for phosphates at ICIS. I am delighted to welcome you, Chris, and thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Maria. What a great way to get into the new year by having a nice warm chat and, figuring out where we're at with the markets.
Exactly. Let's look a bit behind us and see which events in 2025 you think were the most important ones for the market dynamics of today? Let's say for Q1 of 2026.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one event that has had a significant psychological impact, not a material one just yet, but a very significant event which seems to be on everyone's mind right now is the Chinese restriction for exports, which is expected to last much longer than we initially thought, up until August 2026. So again, this doesn't really directly affect Q1, like you say, but it is absolutely very pivotal because psychologically, I feel like it's making everyone start the new year defensively and starting to find where they're going to procure product. And it seems like, if already everyone's approaching the new year from this position, then inevitably there's a supply tightness, even though in reality, on the ground, nothing's really happened yet. But definitely that is something that is affecting people the longer we speak to sources. Another very important factor to keep in mind is, of course, the rising cost of sulfur. That is something that is a considerable concern for everyone. It's really squeezing the margins for producers. And, close to that is also the ammonia cost, which is another key concern. But, on the other hand, we have seen, the recent tightness in countries like India. We have seen producers step in and fill the void, like from Morocco and Saudi Arabia and even Russia. For DAP and NPKs, we have seen people step in and continue to provide the product that would have been otherwise provided by China. So it's a bit of a mixed picture, but overall, the concern for China seems to be the most robust one, the one that everyone reaches for right away.
And if we continue discussing the supply side of the equation, you mentioned, of course, the main newsmaker in the market, China. But what about other big producers? Do you hear any other maybe production halts or some turnarounds or anything that can influence supply in Q1 and tighten the supply-demand balance?
Right now, we don't have any immediate concerns in terms of feeling the gap. And we have, even though we did hear towards the end of last year, some concerns coming from Saudi Arabia. So far, we're not hearing any in the market. It's not as prevalent as the absence of the Chinese would be, for example. And I think we do have to go back and look at also the ingenuity that a lot of traders and suppliers are showing by either pivoting to different grades of products, different products altogether. When there is a bit of a tightness in, let's say we saw this recently with MAP in Brazil, farmers did pivot to SSP and TSP to fill the void until, of course, sulfur kind of created a little bit of a problem there. But so far, we haven't seen such a catastrophic, supply sort of drop that, would be influencing this other than the Chinese absence.
I see. Turning to the demand part of the whole equation, let's start from the, of course, main driver of the market, which is India. And what we see now in India, it is mostly out of season, but still the purchases continue. Maybe it is related to the fact that last year the Indian government was not that effective with purchases, so they felt the deficit right in the middle of the most important application season. So how do you evaluate demand from there, specifically in Q1, which usually is slower versus other quarters? And how this will affect the global price trend?
Absolutely. Yeah. And by the way, you're spot on with everything you're saying. It is true that at least in my opinion, there was some indecision on the part of the Indian government, which was really not incentivizing enough the purchases of DAP, and we ended up being in a very tight situation. But as people were telling us, people kept remembering, oh, we've been here before, we always pull through, and it's true, they did pull through. And turns out that as we enter 2026, India is actually entering the new year from a relatively comfortable position. I don't have numbers immediately ready, but it is true that there's no rush to buy. And the most recent indication has been another Saudi DAP product the prior week, and the price was very comparable to levels already prior to that. So it was only a few dollars below previous levels. I think this shows that Indians are not in any particular rush right now. They have the luxury of being able to see where prices will go. We always hear that some offers are heard very, very, much considerably lower levels, but it doesn't seem like those have taken the bait so far. The levels haven't really moved significantly, but it's also true that we haven't seen prices increase so far. I think a very good indication for the future could be the price of phosphoric acid for Q1. That is always a very good way of getting an insight into the cost of production for DAP. And therefore, people tend to sort of fill the void in the market accordingly. If we see another, people will already be familiar, the phosphoric acid price is considerably higher than it was. That also would reflect on the cost of production. So as soon as that comes out, we will have a clearer picture for the situation on DAP. So far, if we take a little step back and zoom out and look at the situation around the world, surely I'm not the first market analyst to talk about the cost of living crisis, how that's been affecting people. Farmers worldwide are really feeling the pinch, and when people can, they do defer purchases. This is also true for another reason, which we'll get to shortly, for the introduction of CBAM and that interesting development there. That really is another factor of uncertainty, which causes people to stay back for as long as they possibly can. So market illiquidity, farmers deferring purchases, those are really considerable concerns that haven't really, the buyers are not really incentivized to rush to the market right now. I expect that once we get a concrete indication with the phosphoric acid price, first of all, and then once the situation with CBAM in Europe becomes a bit more crystal clear, that will also help some demand, excuse me. Of course, we have Brazil, which traditionally remains relatively quiet this time of year, but those are the major regions so far. And it would seem like we don't have an indication to suspect that people will rush into action all of a sudden. Things can remain relatively quiet for the time being.
Coming back a bit to India, there was one more aspect that we discussed with you last time, a quarter ago, that India pivoted a bit from their traditional way of purchasing, from more or purely spot purchases to rather contract and long-term purchases. So do you expect this thing will continue, and most of the imports of Q1 will come from this contract purchasing from Madan and from OCP? Or rather, India will try maybe to catch the price going down in the spot market and until it goes down still?
That's an excellent question, and we really ought to begin by saying it really could go either way. We have to highlight, starting this topic, by mentioning how really extraordinarily fortunate India was in getting those big volumes from OCP and from Saudi Arabia at a time when really those volumes were needed. At the same time, there will always be those who will seek to see if they can secure product at much lower prices. And it is true that some isolated offers have been heard at considerably lower levels. But it's my expectation that the market has really been sort of shifted recently. The paradigm that's been working for decades really is being tested right now, and I would expect that similar agreements for formulas or long-term supply agreements. I think there's a psychological aspect to it as much as a practical, that the country does need security. Therefore, it is sort of an element of stability, which could help. Lest we forget, last year there was some considerable unease in parts of India and some local assemblies over the availability of fertilizers. Not so much so phosphates, though there were some murmurs there, but also for urea. My expectation is that um, those in charge would be keen to avoid a repeat of those. The bait of lower prices is strong, but I expect, my personal expectation is that the stability from formulas and long-term agreements is something that is needed. But that's just one take. That's just one opinion.
And what about the subsidies? So can you please elaborate more about that? Are they already clear for the year ahead? And if not, when do we expect that?
I expect there will be more clarity on subsidies later in the year. We have seen a recent commitment from the Indian government on the subsidy regime, and this will affect not just phosphates but also nitrates and sulfur and potash, and those are the rates that had been previously announced. There is also a special package in place. I don't expect any significant updates just yet. I think, as you said, as you very rightly point out, it is a significant temptation that India could try to procure products at lower prices. And, it is possible that those in charge could see if a significant amendment to the subsidy regime is needed. But for now, we don't have any specific indication to expect a major revision in the subsidy.
I see, I see. You mentioned already Brazil and the shift that happened there in terms of products shift from traditional MAP to more SSP and other NPs. Uh, First of all, how do you see the demand in Q1 in Brazil? Again, usually slow quarter for the country. And
Yeah, that's exactly right. Sorry,
yeah,
please go
and
on.
do you expect this trend to continue in terms of purchasing less expensive products?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So in terms of Q1, yeah, this is traditionally a quieter season, and there is some carryover stock in the country. Of course, there's a lot of logistics to take into account because this is such a vast area to cover. But really, one of the very first things that people bring up in conversation is just the credit situation and how illiquid a lot of the players are. That really is affecting the conversation in Brazil. And it is actually one of the reasons why people have pivoted to different products to try to maximize what they can get. So absolutely, I've seen the interest in SSP, in particular SSP 19%, and 20%, but in particular 19%. That we've seen that skyrocket with Brazil importing very high volumes of the product and producing. So absolutely, we do expect the same to continue. And the main constraint and balancing act really is the price of sulfur now, which is sort of throwing this whole thing under question somewhat. But overall, there's no question that SSP and TSP are better excuse me, not better priced, but sort of more affordable for farmers than MAP.
Right. Also, China became one of the largest suppliers last year to Brazil, right, with their
Mhm.
NP. So what happens now? China will be out until we don't know when. So how Brazil should procure NP then? Because perhaps simple P is not enough. They would like to have also nitrate part in the product. At least they did it always.
That's correct. Yeah, we have seen a very interesting pivot to get the requisite nitrogen from other products, such as ammonium nitrate or other nitrogen-rich products that are perhaps better priced, and also supplement, the necessary phosphate from very rich products such as CSP to be then used as blends for, custom-made solutions. So that is, again, the example of the same ingenuity that people in Brazil are showing, and I think it will continue to serve them well and under the current climate. And perhaps this is something that other players could learn from and see if it works for them. That sort of flexibility and adaptability could also work in other parts of the world as well.
Indeed, indeed. And I'm afraid that US importers and farmers will also have to be quite, inventive in upcoming season because last season they purchased, the consumption was very low versus previous years. They purchased much less than they usually do. How do you see US market developing in Q1? Yes, for now, it is still slow as far as I see. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. So we're seeing Q1 again traditionally being quite slow and planning for larger quantities in Q2. So this is sort of like a planning stage for spring. And we've had, of course, a tariff regime that threw a lot of uncertainty in the market. But so far it seems like most market players are going back to planning the way they ordinarily would have. And so we do expect things to pick up in Q2, and now is sort of like a quiet before the storm in Q1 traditionally.
Yes, let's see how they conquer this this year. Let's move to Europe, perhaps the largest newsmaker of couple of weeks already now, with its
Absolutely.
yeah, incredible regulation changes. So CBAM, this is the largest elephant in the room. So how do you see the effect of this volatility with CBAM implementation, specifically at phosphates and specifically at Q1? Because everyone was waiting for January 1 to start looking at how the market will react. But now, which date we should look at? What should we wait?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, where do we even begin? So I guess we should preface this by saying that, CBAM went into effect on the 1st of January 2026 in the European Union, and it comes into effect in the UK in 2027, 1st of January. So as of this taping, there hasn't been any official change in like CBAM is still into effect, and it affects fertilizer products. However, a few days ago, the European Commission did announce that they are considering suspending CBAM for anything to do with fertilizers and the added cost that it means for the industry there. That comes after a lot of pressure from countries like France and Italy. And I think it's a measure that is quite likely to be adopted. But we should say that the official line as of yet, it remains, CBAM still remains into effect. And if there's any changes to be made, those will have to be voted on by European countries. It's such a fascinating development, really, and it really shows, it kind of boggles the mind. Many people in the industry are really surprised, well, some not surprised at all, but by the unpreparedness and the shock to the market. But us covering the markets, we really sort of feel for people in the industry who try to make plans and prepare and do the very best they can to navigate the market. And really, such a colossal framework for legislation remains kind of unclear and in flux. So I really understand that it's a difficult time to plan. My understanding is that so far, most people say, until I know what's coming, I'm not going to change my tune, even though there have been some very proactive and ready players in the market who really are trying to be as ready as they can by either pivoting to alternative products or trying to report their CO2 emissions. Nonetheless, the overall picture remains that people are saying, until I know what's coming, I'm not going to make any purchases. And there was a wave of purchases in December, right before CBAM came into effect. And now people are sort of just trying to see what the next step is. So really, I think all eyes should be in the European Union and seeing how this development goes ahead. The European Union is not an organism that is famous for its speed. These procedures really take a long time, which is quite unfortunate for those seeking some reassurance. Even, in previous examples, waiving tariffs or any other similar considerations have taken a very long time. So we have reason to expect that, any revision with CBAM and how those refer to fertilizers could really take a little bit of time to sort out. In the meantime, those who have been ready and purchased product in December and previously sort of in an advantageous position right now. But eventually there's no one who can escape, the advent of time. Time will catch up and people will have to make purchases. We should lastly stress out, and apologies for my very long answer, that any proposed changes from the European Commission will be also applying back to the 1st of January. So there is, the proposal as it currently stands does allow for that, for whatever difference that makes. And so with that very long answer, even though it's, I have to say, quite short for European Union standards, I hope to have tried to shed some light to what you're asking about.
Yes, exactly. The other thing which was mentioned in that press conference by European commissioners was that CBAM is not the only thing which is currently under consideration, let's say, or under discussion. Also, most favored nation tariffs for ammonia and urea were proposed or considered to be waived. However, they indicated during the press conference that they will look into how situation develops with other products and might take a decision accordingly if, for example, they see that the price of some other products, which I would say DAP is the one, they might also waive these most favored nation tariffs for them as well, at least for a certain period of time. We have already seen that in 2022 when the war started, when EU waived for a certain period of time these tariffs. So what I hear in the market that this is also quite possible that it happens. What do you hear? Do you think it is possible, or is it possible together with CBAM suspension, or apart from CBAM suspension? What are the rumors that you hear?
Just what we need, more sort of European confusion. It is true that I think even for CBAM, what happened was a result of the EU trying to address those very serious and legitimate concerns from various parties and really try to assist as best as they can. But it's just really boggles the mind, and I think my personal opinion is that uncertainty really is the worst thing, and no matter what the ultimate cost is, people do adjust and they chart their course, but not knowing what the tariff regime or what CBAM entails, really that is quite corrosive and damaging to business overall. So I think whatever ultimately the EU decides to do, expedition of the process is really paramount. They just have to sort of provide certainty as quickly as possible. In terms of tariffs, I haven't heard much substantiated evidence so far, but given the willingness of the Commission to accommodate those concerns, I would not be surprised, honestly. But this is ultimately a secondary concern right now because CBAM is just so prevalent in everyone's mind that this would be sort of more like trying to put a plaster on it rather than really, which is ultimately adaptability and affordability on the part of farmers who are already dealing with quite a lot. It has to be said, it's really a profound list of concerns, and I fully understand that.
Exactly, exactly. And if we, let's say, zoom out from these problems of regulations and zoom more into the farmers' status, let's say, how do you think? Do they need really to apply more phosphates this year? Because in past two seasons, there were quite a significant amount of, phosphate application correction, downward correction, which was conducted across many European markets because of the affordability problem. So what do you hear from your European farmers specifically? What is their plan, apart from additional costs and volatility, of course?
It really seems that phosphorus is one of course, the main nutrients that farmers reach for, but it comes secondary to nitrates in most instances. So when they can defer application, I think people will. And ultimately, the list of concerns for affordability are just so grave that whenever that's possible, I think farmers will elect to do that. But that's having said that, that's been the case for a number of years now, and people who haven't applied phosphates for the last couple of years will absolutely have to do that if they want to see decent yields. So it's absolutely a concern that I understand, and I think the window for being able to defer those decisions really is closing, and it's not irrational to assume that this could be one of the concerns that were put down to the European Commission for consideration with those things, those decisions.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you very much, Chris. As usually, it was a super insightful discussion today, and I wish you a very, very prosperous and successful Q1 this year, and hope to meet you soon here in a quarter from now to see how volatile this quarter was.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ray. It's always such a pleasure. And I learned so much as well from our conversations. So thank you so much for the time and the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for watching. As usually, I will leave all credentials of Chris and ICIS in the comments. Please let me know in the comments which other questions related to phosphates market you would like me to uncover, and I will be glad to do so with Chris next time. Please subscribe to the channel, put like to this video, and see you soon.